So, patents. Whatever you think about them, they've been with us for quite a long time. It was in 1421 in Florence, Italy, that the first commercial patent was granted. And of course, they were designed to allow the inventor to exploit their invention for a period of time, usually 20 years. The idea was so successful it quickly spread. But it wasn't until 1790, the 10th of April, that the first American patent was actually issued. Now, the American patent system was pretty unique in several ways. One thing was you got a very pretty document signed by the President, the Secretary of State and the Attorney General. That period of time from 1790 lasted until 1836. So the first president to sign an actual patent was George Washington and the last one was Jackson. Now, it had unusual features. Could only be submitted by a US citizen. You had to give a description of what the invention was and the claims you were making, what made it special, like every other patent, but you also needed to include a working model. This working model had to show the claims working, although the model itself didn't. The claims had to work and needed to be 1 foot cube. Of course, some people went over that 1 foot cube, but that was the state of play until 1836, and by that time, 9,750 patents were issued with 9,750 corresponding models. It all came to an end in 1836 because of a fire. On December the 15th, 1836, the Patent Office burnt down, and all of that was lost. It was such a national tragedy that Congress voted $100,000, which at that time was a substantial amount of money, to reconstituting the models, and 2,000 of them were rebuilt. There was enough information outside of the Patent Office to reconstitute the list of patents. His patents weren't numbered, they were registered against the inventor and whatever it was they were inventing. But they were also planning on changing it anyway because new legislation was coming in. Prior to the legislation, only a US citizen, and the cost was $4 to submit a patent. Post the legislation, the cost for a US citizen was raised to $30, and from anybody outside the US who could now register a patent in the US, it was $300. Apart from Britain. For Britain, it was $500. So clearly, at that time, the Americans didn't think much of the British, and they really didn't want patents, but they were allowing them to come in. And of course, it did open the floodgates. Lots more patents came in. In that period of time, 1836 to 1861, there were 23,000 patents submitted and passed by the Patent Office. And by 1870, there was something like 225,000 patents that had been submitted. And of course, all of them with patent models, and this became really onerous for the Patent Office, so they lifted the requirement to create a model. But people still submitted models, they were used to it, they understood it, it's tremendously helpful, and so models continued to be submitted until the 1900s. The use of models was truly unique. No other country had thought about doing it. No other country has done it since. But the use of models has very clear advantages. If somebody submits a patent and you just put two models against each other, you can see really quickly whether the new patent application is in fact unique in its claims or just infringing a previous patent. However, it does come with disadvantages. By 1893, there were so many of them, the bulk of them were put into storage. It was supposed to be secure storage, but there was another fire. And the remaining models went around museums for a while being displayed, but the cost of keeping the models was just so huge that it was decided to abandon it and decided to get rid of them. And in 1925, Congress allowed the auction of the models and the Wellcome Trust bought them. Since then, they've changed hands a number of times, gradually being broken up and going into private collections, but the models are still there. The Hagley Museum in Delaware holds a collection of something like 4,000 patent models. Individuals like Alan Rothschild has about another 4,000, and you see them coming up every now and then in auctions or maybe on antique roadshow kind of programs. But beyond the historic value and the intrinsic beauty of those models, I think, lies a lesson. I very often get asked, do I think this will work? And I almost immediately write back and say, well, build it and see. Because you don't actually have to build the whole thing. You can build a model of it, a real-life model. We tend to think of models as kind of vacuous clothes hangers on a catwalk or little kits that you get in a toy shop. But a real-life model can tell you immediately whether something is going to work or not. No actual large producer will produce a product unless they've done a prototype, which is in effect a model of what they're making. So a model can tell you so much about whether a thing will actually work or not, that it's one of those things that we've sort of lost to a degree. But of course, with the advent of 3D printing, we're getting a kind of democratization of model making. There have always been model makers. There were model makers back in the 17th and 18th century. There are model makers now. They do charge quite a lot to make their models, and you can understand it. The models that they're making are quite a skillful job. But now with 3D printing, of course, we can make those models ourselves. So if you have an idea, you can bring it into reality with a 3D printer and see if your idea in the real world will work. Because of course, we often think in our heads that an idea will work and we can't see why not. Make a model, you'll soon see if it works or not. So patent models, to my mind, are something that we should bring back. Something that's been lost in looking at designing and making things by not making the model. The model will tell you so much about the thing that you're thinking about. Will it work? Is that the best design? Can I rework it? And 3D printing is certainly helping with that process. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and please do remember to like and subscribe.